Hello everyone! Still in the second year of Clown Decade and things are getting worse by the second. What do I mean by it this time? Well, according to this Times article, Tiger Who Came to Tea teaches boys violence and sexism for life. Judith Kerr wrote and illustrated the 1968 children's classic The Tiger Who Came to Tea, and honestly, this is a classic book. I don't know anyone, and I do mean anyone, who does not know this classic British story. And just for a quick 3-minute summary of the plot, this story is basically about a child and a mum about to have tea, and then a tiger comes along and says, "Please, can I have tea with you?" And then he's a bit of a maverick in the house, drinks all the tap in the water, eats all the food they have, and the mother's like, "Thank you for coming along, please go now," and then has to clean up. And then when the dad comes home from work, he realises that the tiger's caused a lot of mischief, and he's like, you know what, fair enough, let's just go out for dinner instead. And on the way back they buy tiger food in case the tiger ever comes back. That's it, that's the story. Entirely wholesome, and basically teaches kids, don't be greedy, because it costs your dad a shed load of money. But basically nowhere in the book is there any sexism, let alone violence, but obviously rabid feminists are bloody mental, so let's see where the article goes. Boys who read harmful children's stories like The Tiger Who Came to Tea are most likely to grow up to become rapists and domestic abusers, a charity director has said. By this logic, every boy in Britain must be a rapist and domestic abuser. Then again, that's what all feminists say. Oh my god, what a start. Zero Tolerance, an Edinburgh-based group that campaigns to end male violence against women, has carried out an audit on books being read to infants in nurseries throughout Scotland. It singled out Judith Kerr's much-loved 1968 picture book for criticism, claiming it reinforces gender stereotypes. Well, there you go. The mother's a housewife, the dad goes to a job. This book was written in the sodding 60s. Come on. And even then, dwelling on that point, this book was written in the 60s when these gender stereotypes were actually the norm for most families in Britain. I don't think we had more rapists back then. Yet by the logic of this charity director, because we are living the gender stereotypes, rape was rampant. Oh my god, this can't be real. Rachel Adamson, co-director of Zero Tolerance, highlighted the old-fashioned stereotypical ending in which the father comes home from work and saves the day by taking his wife and daughter to a cafe for tea. Yet again, it's an old-fashioned ending. Yeah, it's an old-fashioned book. It's over 50 years old. But this sentence has killed me. She also questioned why the tiger was male rather than female or gender neutral. Oh my god. I don't know why they don't try and play it into this story. They were very friendly to the tiger, but the tiger's a massive greedy bastard. So really it should play into the feminist stereotype of men being terrible. But my god, the animal kingdom doesn't have gender neutrality. The animal kingdom's just purely based on sex. Just show me one gender-neutral tiger, Rachel. Just one. I would love to see a gender-neutral tiger, for God's sake, before it mauls you to death. So let's get into some actual quotes from this crazy bitch. Adamson told BBC Scotland that sexist and stereotypical children's books had a harmful, lifelong impact. We know that boys who conform to gender stereotypes are more likely to become perpetrators of violence against women, she said. Go on then, give me a citation. Evidence tells us that gender stereotypes affect girls' self-esteem and body image and holds them back from advancing their careers. This showed in boys and girls choosing different careers based on these stereotypes. Yeah, I don't know how many times I've mentioned it, but there was that documentary that the Norwegian did where he's like, why is Norway the most, gender equal society, still showing massive disproportions between engineering for men and nursing for women and, other things like that. Turns out, that's all the men want to do. Most of them want to do engineering. Most of the women want to do, care work and things like that. Trying to completely blame it on gender stereotypes is just, it's completely against biology. It's against all type of, evolutionary psychology as well. We have evolved to broadly fit into these roles. There is no getting around it. Ever since the days of hunter-gathering type societies, we've never really changed that much. She added, gender stereotypes are harmful, they reinforce gender inequality. Gender inequality is the cause of violence against women and girls, such as domestic abuse, rape and sexual assault. This is just pure ideological talk here. There is nothing to back any of that up. I see it all the time. It's always like, oh, inequality is the cause of crime. And you actually see a graph comparing inequality to, in fact, I'm probably going to get it up. So as we can see from the graphs on screen, you've got the Gini coefficient on the left, which essentially shows you it's essentially a measure of inequality when it comes to income. And on the right, you've got the violent crime graph, provided by the BBC, thankfully, from the Office of National Statistics. As you can see, there's not really any correlation here. I mean, sure, from the 80s to the 90s, there's a bit of a rise in inequality and a bit of a rise in crime. But after that, inequality stays pretty high, whereas crime just starts dropping. So anyone who keeps saying, like, oh, you know, more inequality means more crime, it's not true. It's just not true. There's no correlation there. Just because someone has more money than you doesn't mean you go, oh, I'll tell you what, I want to do a bit of violent crime. Like, where's the logical through point there, honestly? Apart from envy, but envy doesn't really make people that violent. Especially when they've got enough money to have a good standard of living, which most people do in the West. Anyway, back to the point. The point being that it is just neo-Marxist doctrine that inequality causes all the world's problems. It's not true. There's always has been and always will be inequality. Because as we see in every attempt to make everything equal, you all end up at the most common denominator, which is bloody poverty. And obviously the people in charge don't like that, so they give themselves quote-unquote treats, such as a sandpiper buying a $3 million mansion. Anyway, back to the article. When it was pointed out that the book was written decades ago, Addison said that's part of the issue. We are still replacing these harmful gender stereotypes that have been in our society for a very long time. Yes, I remember when society was a lot better than it is now. We have people randomly cancelled for no reason. We have people being called by the police, being told that they need their thinking checked. We have our officials covering up genuine violent crime against women, which I don't think any of those grooming gangs ever read The Tiger Who Came to Tea. I'm just saying. So, we need to replace all these. Yeah, this is the issue. The Tiger Who Came to Tea is the issue that women and girls are getting raped. Yeah, people, rapists in their interviews are like, well, I read the story of a tiger ate a load of food in a house with a mum and a daughter, and then I just wanted to rape. How bloody stupid can you get? Anyway, carrying on. Sadly, all too many much more recent books are still showing a society that we might have seen back in the 1950s. Oh my god, please take me back. However, a spokeswoman for the feminist group for Women Scotland said, taking aim at a well-loved children's classic like The Tiger Who Came to Tea is now the priority for a charity set up to tackle domestic violence. How lovely to know that hungry tigers are now the biggest threat to stay-at-home mothers in Scotland. Like, good point. And that came from a feminist group. You know, you're having infighting now. That is great. Zero Tolerance has published findings of a gender and diversity audit of more than 3,000 books in 21 Scottish nurseries. Only 3 nursery libraries passed the test, having a majority of books that did not promote gender stereotyping and or other forms of inequality. Okay, so people in Scotland, if you've got kids in these nurseries, please take them out of it. Clearly they are crazy. I wouldn't want my kid in a nursery that passed this test. So obviously with this organisation having attacked one of the country's most beloved children's books, and one that I think should be in all nurseries ever and shown to every child because it's great, I thought I'd go into the organisation and see exactly what else they're doing these days to destroy people's happiness. So I found their website, zerotolerance.org.uk, and they've got a page about their original campaign. So Zero Tolerance began as an innovative and striking poster campaign which declared that violence against women was never acceptable. Oh my god, the bravery. During the 6-month campaign ran, Edinburgh was adorned with posters, billboards and banners demanding that the public, politicians and legal professionals confront their own prejudices about men's violence against women and take responsibility for eradicating it. You know, stunning and brave stuff. And, you know, I can't believe they are so brave to go out of their way to stick a few posters up around Edinburgh. So, being an organisation that is directly against violence against women and girls, especially in Scotland, I also decided to look at their position statements page and see exactly what their positions are on these things. They don't have anything about violence against women and girls. What they have are these. Inclusion and respect of trans women. It is our position that trans and non-binary rights are integral to and contribute to feminism. Scotland's Violence Against Women services provide trans-inclusive services and trans-inclusion plans that have been in place since 2012. This inclusive approach has not given rise to any concerns or challenges Rather, trans women have added to our movements through their support, voluntary work, and as staff members. You can find out more about our stance on our blog, No Thank You. Violence against women, homophobia, and transphobia are all rooted in misogyny. We are committed to working and with partner LGBTQI+ organisations to end this inequality, discrimination, and violence. So basically, it's a massive virtue signal to say we are not TERFs. But they have a second position. You know, they're not a one-issue organisation. Their second position statement is on abortion. Reproductive rights, including the right to an abortion, are fundamental to women's well-being and equality. Denying or reducing access to abortion denies women's bodily autonomy and is a form of structural violence against women. Of course, if the fetus is a woman, nay bother there. It's only adult women we care about. Like other forms of violence against women, it leads to a range of negative consequences, including emotional trauma, illness, and death. Any society that wants to end violence against women and promote gender equality must provide access to safe, legal, and free abortion on request. Oh my god. The amount of abortions we've had across Europe right now, it's more abortions than people who died in the Holocaust. We have killed a lot of unborn babies for non-medical reasons, just as effectively as a use of contraception. Therefore, as part of our strategy to end violence against women, we support sister organisations to protect and strengthen reproductive rights. Of course, ending the life of unborn girls, nay bother. So as you can see from that, this organisation is just, it's the most intersectional one I've seen. They are full-on leftists and, again, should not be taken seriously. Every single one of their justifications comes down to, oh, there's inequality. Yeah, there's inequality in everything. Is the inequality unjustified? The answer is no, but obviously they're neo-Marxists, so all inequality must be unjustified. Well, I'm sorry to say, but some people work harder than others. As the old Sean Locke joke goes, they say a women's work is never done. It's probably why they get paid less. And so, again, this Zero Tolerance organisation, which was originally set up to look specifically at violence against women and girls, they have consultations and provide statements declaring the organisation's position on recent political activity. So one that really caught my eye was the statement on trans and non-binary inclusive education, which was put out in September of last year. And basically, most of the first bit are saying that the Department for Education in England are not up to scratch. And then they conclude with these paragraphs. In Scotland, ministers recently accepted all 33 of the LGBT Inclusive Education Working Group's recommendations for professional learning of teachers, practice and guidance, school inspectors and anti-bullying, and I assume that Zero Tolerance was one of these groups. These recommendations, which are set to come into effect by March 2021, include updating guidance on the conduct of relationships, sexual health and parenthood education in schools, to include themes relating to LGBTI, equality and inclusion, including understanding the terminology, representations of gay people and their relationships in ways which seek to deliver understanding and equality, recognising and understanding homophobia, biphobia and transphobia within schools and their impact on wider society, tackling homophobia, biphobia and transphobia within school and their impact on wider society, understanding prejudice in relation to the LGBTI community and awareness of the history of LGBTI equalities movements and an understanding of respect, privacy and consent. And that's this is a complete Mott and Bailey. This is all the stuff that sounds, okay to your average normie. What they don't obviously say is that this also included the right for teachers to keep from the parents that their kid is transitioning at school and going by a different name. This essentially gives a lot of power to the government to indoctrinate the kids into what is essentially a religion that the parents may not agree with. This is why I think all schools should be private. We welcome this review of RSHP in Scotland and hope clarity on the above issues will provide safer and more inclusive education environments for all children. We call on the Department for Education to review its current guidelines for teachers and schools in England to ensure that they understand how to support all the students in their experience of gender identity. So Scotland have essentially given these groups a mile, and then they'll probably try and stop, and then the groups will say, oh, why didn't you give us 10 miles? And unfortunately, the English government always seems to be about 5 to 10 years behind the Scottish one, so expect this stuff in English schools as well. Homeschool your kids. So with these statements clearly being in lockstep with things that most of the governments are moving towards anyway, they also have their own campaigns, and one of them is the hashtag #TalkingGender. Although social media can sometimes feel like an echo chamber, our lives are not. We all know lots of people who might not always see eye to eye with on issues about gender, race, sexuality and disability. Again, this was supposed to be just about women's domestic violence issues and violence against women, things like that. Now it comes into race, sexuality and disability. Intersectionality rots the brain. And so we all have the power to challenge these ideas with people who know and love us. Change one person's mind to change a culture, whether that's through open conversations or by forwarding a link to an article or video. These people don't really understand how to change people's minds. You don't really change people's minds. You have to let people reflect on themselves and change their own mind, and that's quite a hard thing to do. So after all those stated aims, it turns out this whole thing's just a grift, unfortunately. So what can you do? Start #TalkingGender. Use our guides and Mythbusters to have conversations with family, friends, colleagues, nurseries and teachers, i.e. shill our stuff. Like, comment on our campaigns posts on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Someone really needs to check the grammar on these. This is some awful spelling. To get more people talking gender and let us know what you think. So again, shill our stuff. And finally, donate. Help Zero Tolerance continue to lead work in primary prevention of men's violence against women through tackling gender inequality. Again, we've gone through the inequality argument, but yeah, this whole thing's just a bloody grift. Honestly, do you want your money going to a bloody organisation that says the tiger who came to tea will turn boys into rapists and domestic abusers? Honestly, people unironically give to this charity. But I think what's even funnier about this is that this charity that totally takes violence against women super seriously has another campaign called Violence Unseen. Violence Unseen Reimagined is an online photography exhibition that aims to put unacknowledged and often unseen forms of violence against women on the map. So what's their first example? Literally, this is their first example. Image, billboard on a street next to a multi-storey car park, billboard, white background with faded grey image of the Houses of Parliament and the Thames. MP Diane Abbott stands in front, left in black and white. They actually unironically got someone to describe an image that's literally on the screen, and the reason I read that out is to just show how silly it is. So, their description here is Diane Abbott MP received the highest proportion of abusive tweets of all MPs, but even without including tweets directed at her, the other 19 minority ethnic MPs still received 35% more abusive tweets than their white colleagues. As I was saying, this super serious campaign group, their first example of violence against women is mean fucking tweets. Do not take this organisation seriously. Although unfortunately it seems that the Scottish Parliament do take this campaign group seriously, or at the very least are doing things that they support. Anything this organisation supports, you should probably be against, because they are so batshit insane that everything they say should just be dismissed out of hand. But I think what's even funnier is their second example. So it's about this trans woman or whatever, I don't know. And the first thing they say is 83% of trans women have experienced hate crime at some point in their lives. And we'll just stop there, because I decided to have a quick Google of that to see where they got that statistic. So first it comes from Stonewall. I'm just not going to believe that. But their stat here says more than 4 in 5, i.e. 83%, trans young people, so not just trans women, but all trans people that are young, have experienced name-calling or verbal abuse, i.e. have not experienced a hate crime. So obviously that is all I'm going to go through of this campaign, because they are just massive liars. So the last thing I'm going to go through on their website is their opinions page. And just from this screenshot alone, you can probably tell that it's pretty cancerous. So, you know, what should an ideal Scottish male leader look like? Well, guess what? He's an intersectional feminist. Feminist kids shows for lockdown. Great. But the two we're going to go through are the short guide on what to read and watch to make #Black Lives Matter, and why language matters, how the violence and perpetrators are framed. Because, yeah, guess what? They're batshit. So, lo and behold, with a short guide on what to read to make Black Lives Matter, most of it is either films by Jordan Peele, where it is nothing but race grifting and propaganda, or it is the same with the books, and some of them are non-fiction, and one of them caught my eye, which was the Rennie Edo Lodge, Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, which was quite a big book back in 2018, I think it came out. So they say Edo Lodge's account of the emotional labour required to educate white people, those who acknowledge systematic racism, and those ignorant of their privilege. So it explores the whitewashing of feminism and the inextricable link between race and class in the UK, offering a refreshing new framework of how identify, acknowledge, and tackle racism. So I've actually read that book, and I've actually done a review on my channel. Link in the description if you would like to see that. But I think one of the best ways to explain why the book is absolutely useless, basically at one point, Edo Lodge has a transcription of an interview she had on the phone with Nick Griffin, ex-leader of the now I think dissolved BNP. And just to quickly explain why they shouldn't be listened to, a lot of the Wignats on Twitter praise Mark Collette, the guy who was, I think, deputy leader of the BNP. But basically throughout that interview, he's obviously giving, racist answers back and things like that. Things that I would never dream of saying, especially directly to a black woman. And she tries to imply that basically majority of people in Britain agree with Nick Griffin here. And obviously that's not the case. So she is just outright lying about public opinion on issues of race, and completely outright lies about how black people are portrayed in media. I think at one point she says there's never been a black superhero or something. It's just wrong, but honestly, watch my video review of it. It's garbage. The video's good, the book's garbage. But the final view I'm going to go through, and one I thought I would at the very least come to terms with accepting, is this one. Why language matters. How are the violence and perpetrators framed? So they start off strong. Rape is not a sex attack. I mean, rape is literally a sex attack. In two separate articles, The Sun used phrases sex attack and sex slaves. Another article in The Sun talked about women being blackmailed into steamy sex romps. Okay, that second one, the blackmailed into steamy sex romps, does frame it not as bad as it probably should be. But rape is not a sex attack. Rape is not even about sex. It is about power. And this is your mind on feminism. Rape is literally about sex. Rape is literally about a man getting his penis into a woman's vagina without their consent. That is literally the definition of sex. In using these phrases instead of rape or abuse, it suggests that these acts were consensual. No, it doesn't. It gives bias towards the perpetrator. No, it doesn't. It also sensationalises the event, making them into gossip instead of crimes, and that has a huge impact on survivors. Now, that last one, as I say, the steamy sex romp one, that one is obviously one I can agree with does that, but to say, oh, it's a sex attack or it's sex slaves, it's like, no, that doesn't imply it was consensual. They were pretty close with it. I mean, to be honest, the example I'd use is, don't call them grooming gangs, call them rape gangs. But no, because that would be racist or something, and that would ruin their intersectional credentials. So the next example, which I don't really get, to be honest, is perpetrator, not jilted lover. One article, literally one article, in the Daily Mail described a jilted lover who was convicted for disclosing private sexual photographs of his ex-girlfriend. Many people are broken up with and do not violently violate the privacy of their ex-partners by sharing intimate images. Can we stop calling it violently violate when there's no violence involved? Yeah, it's a horrible thing to do. But it's not violence. We can't just start describing every bad thing in the world as violence, because it completely dilutes the meaning of it, and this is why people aren't taking it seriously anymore, because of what you're doing. By using the term jilted lover, the article comes to his defence and justifies his actions. No, it doesn't. All it means is that he was suddenly broken up with. It's making absolutely no defence in his case. Stop being an idiot. He is not a jilted lover, he is a perpetrator of violence against women and a convicted criminal. A jilted lover and a perpetrator of... It's not even violence. It's not even violence. But back to my point. You can be both a jilted lover and a criminal. A jilted lover doesn't necessarily mean that it is a defensive term. You freaking idiot. And my last example, which is an example I can't believe they're putting in. Man Not Beast. The Sun ran an article, again, one article, with the title Beast Bust Up about convicted sex offender Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, who they called a pedo. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein was a pedo. Words like beast are an issue, as they make it seem like only the worst kind of monsters commit crimes like this. That's true. Only the worst type of monsters commit horrible crimes like this. It's not the average man doing this, you idiot. When we know that from the outside lots of perpetrators seem very normal, friendly and charismatic. Yeah, they're still beasts. Just because they hide it doesn't mean we shouldn't call them beasts. Beast also makes us think of animalistic urges and impulses, when violence against women is often carefully thought out, and is always an active decision on behalf of the perpetrator. Their argument for this is, oh yeah, humanise people that are awful, because little do you know, most men are actually awful. This is unbelievable, yes. Cases like Ted Bundy, absolutely violence that was thought out. Man's still a beast. But then they're saying, like, oh, it's always an active decision on behalf of the perpetrators. Right, you've got to realise, most domestic violence issues are actually caused by the women. It's the women that usually make the first violent action there, and obviously the men fight back. Problem is, you put a man against a woman, the man's probably going to win over 9 times out of 10. And they're also going to do more damage. Now, I'm absolutely not defending men who harm women beyond what is proportional. But you can't go along with this lie saying that it's only men that are violent to women. Women can also be violent to men, and as I said, the stats show most of the time it's the women that are starting the domestic abuses. But this whole attempt to try and control the language is just completely unjustified, completely ignores the facts, and let's face it, is just trying to be a foot soldier for the new religion. And it's one you should absolutely reject. But unfortunately, they're in with the Scottish government at the very least. They are advising them on things such as education for children, and they are literally, they literally went through Scottish nurseries and went, right, you see this Tiger Who Came for Tea, this really wholesome book? Yeah, that needs to go, because it turns boys into rapists, honestly. But that's pretty much everything I had to go through with zero tolerance in this Tiger Who Came for Tea conundrum. But before I go, one of my favourite comedians died recently, and I thought he actually did a pretty good rework of this book. I'll let him describe it.
Sort of reworked an old classic, and it is the Tiger Who Came for a Pint.
Yes, Sean Locke, for those that don't live in the UK, he is quite a big member on panel shows throughout the UK. And he did a little skit on 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, where he reads his entire children's book about the tiger who came for a pint.
There was once a tiger who fancied a pint. Not Carling, of course. That was too weak and too gassy.
And I think that's about as much as I can show you and get away with before Channel 4 comes from my channel. So if you'd like to see an actual violent version of the Tiger Who Came for Tea, I've put the link in the description for you to enjoy his little skit. And with that, that is everything I had for you today. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.